on this episode of Indiana Education Insight.
INDOT in general, so they're responsible for the state highways and the interstates. They'll spend $1 or $2 or even $3 million for 3 inches of snow. I mean, that's just that quick. And so for them to invest what they do with my company, which is nowhere near that kind of money, but
be nice, wouldn't it?
Yeah, it sure would be. Yeah.
Every week, the Indiana Association of Public School Superintendents is taking you inside today's Indiana education collaboration and tomorrow's education trends. We're staying on the pulse of public school innovators throughout Indiana and beyond. Join our conversation and contribute to our upcoming topics at iapssin.org/podcast. Here's your host, Dr. J.T. Koopman.
Today's episode of Indiana Education Insight. I'm Dr. J.T. Koopman, Executive Director of the Indiana IPSS. This podcast is being delivered by our IPSS team and produced by our friends at Edge Media Studios. As Executive Director of IPSS, I'm excited to bring you this weekly show where we feature Indiana education innovators from all over our great state, from students to superintendents. We'll also be talking to higher education leaders and educators at the state level as we work together as proactive public education advocates. That's why IPSS is here and why we're proud to bring you this show. Every week, we're talking about trending topics in the public education space while bringing in Indiana education innovators to hear their perspective. As with any organization, it takes great leadership to be successful, and that is one of the main missions of IPSS, developing great school district leaders. It's always great to have experienced and passionate educators joining the show, so let's get started with today's conversation.
Topics and trends in Indiana education.
Today's guest is Mr. Michael Clark, co-founder and CEO of the band Weather App. As a self-made man, his entrepreneurial spirit has led him on this successful journey. And by the way, he is a product of Indiana Public Schools. He has appeared on air with multiple television stations and as the meteorologist forecasting local weather conditions. Welcome, Mr. Clark. We are thrilled to have you join us on today's podcast.
Yeah, I appreciate it. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. So, Mr. Clark, if you could please tell us a little bit about your background and your various professional roles.
Yeah, so Dr. Koopman, as I graduated from Whiteland High School in 2006, I've always had a passion for weather and for meteorology. And as I got older and I started to learn about the economics and the economy and marketing and how weather impacted the economy, I started to get very curious. Well, maybe there's a way that weather, an accurate weather forecast could be very useful for anybody in any kind of situation. So I started reading up on that and really started, studying on how weather impacts the economy. And I went to enrolled myself into Mississippi State University, their online operational meteorology program. Through my stint of completing those courses, I reached out to a meteorologist here in Indianapolis by the name of Brian Wilkes. Uh-huh. He's on Fox 59, and he's a great friend of mine now. He's done a lot for me, but I was able to complete a 2.5-year internship there. Eventually got to a point where I could kind of train the new interns that would come in, and then I would do some fill-in work there and do some television, broadcast forecasting, and things like that, and was even offered a job there, and it was through that time that I had decided that I was more interested in the details and kind of the nitty-gritty behind the scenes, like the science of it.
Yep.
And so I started a Facebook page about 6 years ago, and we called it BAM Weather, and it was designed from the three of us who own the business. We all three went to Whiteland High School, Brian, Amanda, and myself, and that's where we got BAM from, Brian, Amanda, Michael. And so we started this Facebook page, and eventually I found myself just forecasting the weather every day for free, not really, doing it for anybody, just to put it out there on Facebook. And we started having people saying, "Hey, you're pretty good at this. Maybe you should start a subscription service, or maybe you should launch an app or something like that." So we kind of ventured down that path, and First, we started kind of supporting our business off of marketing and advertising from social media. You know, we would say, "Hey, this forecast is brought to you by such and such," and then we started getting into kind of the private sector of, well, if a snow removal contractor has 30 employees, and if he has to go out and remove 2 inches of snow, he needs to know when, where, when it's going to start and stop, and all those details, because he's making decisions that cost him $20,000, $30,000.
Right.
So we started just kind of getting into that, and then our name just kind of took off from there. And now today we offer forecasts for NDOT, the Department of Transportation.
Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah, a lot of municipalities, City of Crawfordsville, and then we have a lot of schools that we forecast weather for, which I'm sure we'll talk about. And just over the course of about the last 6 years, I've really been fascinated to see how weather impacts everybody's day-to-day, decision making.
Sure, absolutely.
So,
well, Michael, we've known each other for a long time.
yeah.
And interestingly enough, when you had your Facebook page, my daughter would always say, "Hey, Michael said it was going to do this or that," and you were dead on every time. You were absolutely dead on.
That's great. That's great.
And so she followed you on Facebook, and you predicted a very, very accurate weather forecast. And so another part that you just mentioned, I didn't realize that snow contractors that move snow might have an interest in this. And my stepson is actually a snow removal contractor.
Okay.
So we got to get you guys
Get us hooked up.
get you hooked up
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
together.
Absolutely.
But again, NDOT, the Department of Transportation, whether it be Indianapolis or other city municipalities, I think that's a great idea. They absolutely need to know that and be able to have their trucks and personnel positioned, as well as salt and all those other things that go along with snow removal. So, I really think you're onto something here.
It's crazy to think about just NDOT in general. So they're responsible for the state highways and the interstates. They'll spend $1 or $2 or even $3 million for 3 inches of snow. I mean, that's just that quick. And so for them to invest what they do with my company, which is nowhere near that kind of money, but
It'd be nice, wouldn't it?
yeah, it sure would be. Yeah, but it's very important to them. Especially when you have these little surprise ice events and these little snows that, it can really catch people off guard. So
Like it did last week.
exactly,
Right.
yeah, it can get ugly pretty quick.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I think that you have a nice niche.
Thank you.
With this, and so we talked a little bit about schools. So how can we get this information out to schools and have schools use BAM and use your product?
Yeah, so it's a great question, and we have a handful of schools. We have Center Grove schools, Lebanon schools. We have a few schools in southern Indiana, Boonville, Pioneers down there, and we work heavily with the athletics departments a lot.
Oh, that's a great idea.
The outdoor athletics and things like that.
Sure.
These guys are. They also have. We have a whole system we sell that is a lightning warning system. So it's
Right.
it's an outdoor system that takes the human guesswork out of keeping people safe from lightning.
Yeah.
If the average thunderstorm, you can have a bolt of lightning strike 25 miles away from that storm.
Yeah.
And a human sometimes just isn't good enough to prevent that from
Yeah,
happening.
they're looking at the clouds above them.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Not out at what's coming. So, the way we do our enrollment or our subscription, it's a subscription service, and it's a base price for the year. And I'll just go ahead so everyone can know it's a $2,000 a year fee, and that gets the entire school on board. The administrators, the coaches, whoever wants to be involved in this forecast product can get that, and it comes to their email every day. It comes very early in the morning. Sometimes, depending, like this morning, our forecasts were out at 4:30 a.m. because we had slick roadways. Our guys get in the office about 3:30 or 4 each morning. So we have those clients that need to make those decisions early,
Sure.
like the superintendents,
Right.
when it comes to delays and,
Yeah.
and things like that. So it's very easy, that the best way to do it is to contact us, shoot us an email. It's just info@bamwx.com. and we get you signed up. And oftentimes, what the schools will do is send a check, and they get a full year service out of it.
Okay. And I'm assuming that through this application that they're allowed to put that on their phones, and that's how they receive that information. Is that how that works?
Yeah. So as long as you have like your email app on your phone where your emails comes to your email.
Okay.
And when you open that email, it's fully interactive. There's a video forecast. There's graphics, explanation. It's unlike anything you would see for free or that you're accustomed to getting now.
Yeah.
So as long as you got email, it comes right to your emails.
When I was superintendent, I could have used that. I did not like getting up at 4 o'clock in the morning.
I bet not.
Checking the roads.
Yeah, we got a call from my daughter's school this morning. She goes down to Nineveh Hensley Jackson, the preschool down there, and I got the call about 5:15. I'm like, this poor guy's probably been up for an hour trying to figure this out. So.
Absolutely. Well, and I noticed that Brown County was closed today.
Yeah.
Yep. So you need to get in touch with the superintendent down there in Brown County. So
I'd love
to. Dr. Hammock, have I got a deal for you?
Yeah, absolutely. I'd love to.
Well, thanks for providing that overview of the application process. It sounds pretty simple.
Yeah.
From schools to NDOT, who else do you have enrolled in this?
So we have, we have the Cincinnati Reds.
No kidding.
Yeah, we have all the Franciscan Alliance hospitals.
Okay.
We have the Children's Museum, and we also have the 500 Festival Committee, which is responsible for the mini marathon, the Indianapolis 500 parade. So if you have a 30,000 people set to run a mini, marathon,
absolutely,
any weather at all, whether it could even be heat or humidity,
could
have a huge impact on those runners. You've got a team of doctors on that mini that they're wanting to know, did the dew point go up 1 degree or go? I mean, it's very crucial information. So we provide it to an array of people, and it's been so fun being a small Indiana business. A lot of Indiana businesses like to support other small Indiana businesses. Yeah. So it's been nice to interact and mingle with some of the larger organizations of the state.
Are you the marketing guy? Or how did you get in touch with all these businesses?
I am. I'm very aggressive, and and I'm assertive, and I try to get our product out. I'm very aggressive on social media, on all platforms. Snapchat, Facebook, Instagram, all that stuff. And our company's motto, which is on my shirt, it's weather made simple. So we just want to get you an accurate forecast as simply as possible, that's affordable, and it's something that can just help your operation. And a lot of people are attracted to that idea.
Mm-hmm. Well, any of these associations is the IHSA part of this?
They're not. We've talked to them. Okay. We've had we've definitely had conversation, but not yet.
Okay.
We're trying.
Well, Indianapolis 500, very weather dependent activity, whether it be the qualifying stint or whether it be the actual race. And you brought up an excellent point about runners in the weather, because that really is weather dependent.
Yeah.
And again, something that you brought to my attention was the dew point and how that can affect the humidity, and in turn, how that can affect somebody out on that course. And the amount of hydration that they need and all those kinds of things. Yeah. So why would they not want to have your...
That's exactly, I mean, when you go to do a quote-unquote a sales pitch, it's really about the safety of the people you're responsible for.
Absolutely.
So as a superintendent, you're responsible for the safety of everybody within your school there. So it's something they could it's a tool.
Yeah.
It's a tool.
Now, we have a lot of universities right here in central Indiana, let alone across the state, and so many of their events and activities are outdoor events. Coaches need to know about heat and hydration and all of those kinds of things. Is that part of what you go talk with them about?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, anything weather-related that can fall under that term, inclement weather.
Right.
Heat exhaustion. Anything. I mean, it can be sunny and, but if it's 95 degrees with a dew point of 70 and humidity is 95% roughly, people are going to get tired.
Right.
You're going to have people, if you push them too hard, they're probably going to fall over.
Sure.
You know what I mean? So it's just one of those things where, you know, where we get into this in a second, but it's those details that separate what we do from a news forecast or a free app on your phone.
Yeah.
You know,
How about the Indianapolis Colts?
we don't have them, and we don't have the Pacers, but you know, we do have the Indianapolis Indians.
Yeah.
But the Pacers and the Colts aren't really weather dependent
Right.
outside.
That's true.
You know, well, I've tried to get in touch with Mr. Ursay on the roof deal because sometimes I'm like, why wouldn't you open the roof today? It's really nice out.
Yeah.
You know, and
Yeah.
so we got this real nice roof. Let's open it up, but not yet. So
Well, you know, who knows what's going to happen.
that's right. Yeah.
Well, you've shared some, you know, really what BAM looks like and some of the experiences that you've had with this from your participants' perspective. So, you know, based on your experiences as a meteorologist, what's the difference between what you have versus what we're going to hear from Brian Wilkes?
Absolutely. So, you know, we have a great deal of respect for all those folks that offer that stuff. And I always tell people I'm not out to make anyone look like they're not doing their job. You know, what we do, I always have related it to a school exam.
Right.
All right. So if I take notes and I study and I work with a tutor and I try really hard, I'm probably going to get an A.
Yeah.
You know, I dig into the books to, you know, I'm looking at everything I can to get the best grade possible. To whereas if I'm slacking, you know, kind of like I did when I was younger, you know, but, you know, if I mess around and I don't try hard and I don't talk to a tutor and I don't take notes,
Sure.
I get a C or a D.
Yeah.
I may even fail the test.
Yeah.
And it's very similar to when looking at a weather forecast, there's so many different variables and things that go into it that it's very important to take the time to study how that can impact folks. And a lot of times the guys on television or the free apps on your phone, they don't do that. You know, they don't really care about the accuracy because that's not what they're paid for.
Right.
They're paid for marketing and people to watch their news station.
Right.
You know,
Yep.
so what we're paid for is how I feed my family is based on the accuracy of my product.
Uh-huh.
So I've got to put in more time, you know, more effort, and you know, I only hire the best. I got 2 guys who were graduated summa cum laude from their universities, and guys that are very, very smart, very dedicated to their craft. So we try to quality and precision is a big deal for us.
Yeah. Well, it would have to be.
Yeah.
You know, if you're going to be doing something that is above and beyond and a little bit different, then your position and how you do this is extremely important. Obviously, the big question is, what's been your biggest miss?
Oh man, I've had a couple, but I'll never forget. It was March 8th of 2013. We were forecasting, you know, a big 8, 9, 10-inch snowstorm about 72 hours out. We were pretty confident, you know, everything had shown it, and woke up the next morning and I thought, oh my goodness, it's gone. Like there was nothing. I'm like, well, I can't just tell my clients, okay, we're nothing, you know. And so I'm like, all right, I think the models are kind of, you know, they'll come back around. You know, meteorologists, we look at 20 different weather models and we have to dissect what they're saying.
Yep.
And no, it never snowed. It never even rained.
Right.
You know, it just, and had some upset folks, you know. And but the good thing is with our services, we're very transparent. So if we say, hey, this is, you know, our confidence is shaky on this, you know, we'll explain the risks associated with that decision. But we've had a couple of big misses. There was one other one a couple of years back in 2012 where we thought we would get a huge rainstorm from the remnants of a hurricane. And we were forecasting like 4 to 6 inches of rain, and we got like a half inch.
Sure.
You know, so you have those misses.
Yeah.
And I would say 8 out of every 10, we do pretty well, but there's always going to be that one, you know.
Weather's not a perfect science.
It isn't.
No.
It's so far from it too, but we're trying to make it that way.
Well, you know, I just know from not necessarily personal experience, but for what I've been told is that you're very, very accurate, and to only have 2 of those misses in 6 years, not too bad of a track record.
It's all right. Yeah, we pride ourselves in the hard work. I appreciate that. We you know, we do try hard to not, you know, we call them dry fires. You know, we try not to have any dry fires because, you know, you get guys that they send out 15 employees or they're canceling schools or they're delaying games, and that costs money from any aspect of things.
You know, I think back to you know, you're from down south of Indianapolis, and you probably remember when Franklin was basically flooded.
Yeah.
And Whiteland was basically flooded. I don't think I mean, I don't know, but I'm just going from memory. That wasn't anticipated. And if they had had your service, you could have probably given them a lot more forewarning about the precipitation that was going to bring on an actual flood.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that was what we call in the science world a 1 in 100 year flood. You know, it was a pretty serious one. So indications from things like that are often what we call a short term or a nowcast, which basically that's a 12 to 15 hour notification. But even then, even if you had 12 to 15 hours to prepare for anything like that, whether it be flooding or freezing mist or freezing fog,
Right.
You can make a lot of really good decisions rather than just reacting once it's already happened.
Sure.
So
yeah, absolutely. Well, I can think of so many things that you were talking about as far as misses were concerned, and I tried to make a school call based on the weather forecast, and close school, and based on the weather forecast, and lo and behold, it was sunny and didn't snow, and I'm eating crow because I was trying to be proactive in relationship to that. And I can recall another circumstance as a superintendent. We call the TV and radio station, so it used to be to get all this information out to the public. Now it's pretty much on social media, but back in the day it was a little bit different before social media existed. And I made a phone call on fog, and they said, "Now where are you?" And I told them, we were in Johnson County. And what school district is this? And I told them it was Clark Pleasant. And so we were the only location in the entire state that was socked in with fog.
Really?
And it was a phenomenon that I've never experienced, and have never experienced it before. Had teachers that were coming in from Hancock County and from Marion County, and we were on a 2-hour delay because of fog, and they thought I was nuts until they drove into that curtain of fog when they crossed over the county line.
Yeah.
So I mean, those are kind of weather phenomenons that sometimes you can't explain.
Yeah.
But
absolutely,
it is what it is.
Fog's a bear too. It's a bear.
Well, fog, and I hate ice.
Yeah.
Ice is terrible. So in my opinion, whatever people pay you, if you can predict ice to help them, whether it's with their employees or opening or closing a business, I think that's just huge, because you can't do anything about ice.
Absolutely. Yep. Absolutely.
Well, you've certainly give us a lot of pause for thought, and you've validated everything that you do as a business. Are there other things that you'd like to mention in relationship to your service and why it's valuable?
Absolutely. I think it's a great question too, and the best, I would say the best thing about our service, the largest AKA or quote unquote selling point, is that these guys have the ability to talk with a meteorologist at any time. So if they want to send a text, or if they want to make a phone call, like, hey, hey Michael, I'm on the fence, I'm watching TV and it's saying this, and you're saying this. Can you explain to me, what's going on? And oftentimes when we can make that decision, or not decision, recommendation of what we would do, it eases them a little bit, because essentially, it would just be like me coming in and acting as a superintendent, pretending like I know how to be one.
Yeah.
And when you go in and you're guessing things, it's difficult to feel confident about that guess.
Sure.
And so we just want to take the guesswork out of the weather aspect of it. We just want to say, hey, this is the forecast and this is what I would do. And there you go. But the ability to talk to a meteorologist is, in my opinion, is invaluable, because you can't really call up and get a meteorologist's opinion, at least not normally.
Yeah, I'm not going to be able to ring up Angela Buckman or Brian Wilkes and say, "Hey, can we have a little conversation
Right.
here?"
No.
That's not going to happen.
No. And those guys, they're focused on Indianapolis and not focused on those kind of details.
Yeah.
So that's huge. I mean, we've got farmers that'll call and say, "Hey, I'm going to spray dicamba today."
Oh, that's another great
Yeah.
part of that. I hadn't thought about farmers.
Yeah, I mean, so dicamba is a huge thing right now. If dicamba, it's a product that if it can spread by the air, by the wind, it will kill other farmers' crops. So if one farmer sprays, he could kill the whole farm to the east of him if he's not careful. So a guy can call and say, "Hey, what's my wind forecast the next 5-6 hours? Am I going to have any gusts?" Just even spraying a chemical.
Who knew?
Yeah, right. Yeah.
I mean, but see, that's an important aspect
Yeah.
of farming. Let alone, what's the weather going to be like so that I can predict when I'm going to put my crop in or when I'm going to take it out or when I spray and all of those kinds of things.
Absolutely.
Do you have farmers as customers?
Oh yeah, that's our biggest client base is farmers.
No kidding.
Yeah. In fact, we provide forecasts to Beck's Hybrids, the Beck Seed Company,
Sure.
and they're our largest client. And the amount of referral and clientele that we get from them is a huge blessing for us. But we have roughly, I would say, Dr. Koopman, probably about 500 farmers in our client base, which is by far our largest. That's what keeps us the busiest.
Right.
So
I hadn't even thought about that, Michael.
Yeah. Agriculture is our biggest niche, if you will.
So getting that word out there,
Mm-hmm.
do you work with Indiana Farm Bureau or any of those folks?
I do a lot of on-site presentations for them.
Okay.
I'll go out and I'll present my spring outlook to their group of growers.
Okay.
They'll get 150 farmers out there. I'll give a 30-minute presentation. I'll do like a live question and answer session.
Sure.
And in February, I think I'm flying to 5 or 6 different cities throughout the Corn Belt. Just giving presentations. So
that is very cool.
yeah, it's neat. I absolutely love to do it. So
Yeah.
it's fun.
Yeah. There's a guy that does crop dusting in Martinsville.
Okay.
Does he happen to be one of your clients?
He doesn't, but I've heard of him and I've seen him do it. So
to me, you'd be invaluable to him.
yeah, I know. I probably need to reach out to him. There's always this one person. I'm like, I need to get a hold of that guy, and then I get busy, and
Right.
you know how it is.
I don't know how you do it all. I mean, you're a small business and you're trying to do it all. So I kind of get that.
Yeah.
So in closing, would you have any advice for maybe some others that might have an interest in meteorology and
Yeah,
kind of pursue what you're doing?
Absolutely. So I mean, I've had guys come into our office who are fresh out of college studying meteorology, and the education in meteorology is heavily loaded upon books and mathematical equations and physics, and that's all invaluable stuff that you have to have. So you must get good at that. One thing I wish I would have gotten good at in high school is my math and taken the advanced math classes and. Because in college, for me, I was up. I was just sleepless nights. I mean, I had to really get after it.
Yeah.
To get the math part of it down. Right. So definitely take your math and your science very seriously, and really take pride in what you're doing there. And then the most important thing is network. A lot of times it's not what you know, but it's who you know.
Sure.
And you've got to get out there and get your hands wet, get your hands dirty, and actually work in a day-to-day operational, job.
Yeah.
Volunteer, work for free.
Yeah.
And get after these guys that have been doing it for 20, 30 years, because they don't teach how to do it in school. They just teach you the why on it.
Yeah.
So it's important, as in any field, to get out there and get with the experienced guys and really pick their brains.
I know this doesn't really have anything to do with the Midwest and certainly not Central Indiana, but, we've had some pretty significant weather events here in the last 6 months to a year with hurricanes. Is that something that you would be involved with as well if you were in that area, or that you maybe even see when you're doing your forecasting?
Yeah, absolutely. So a way to explain that, some of these guys on here may remember, but a couple of years ago we had a super El Nino. Okay,
Right.
And essentially what that is that just means near the equator in the Pacific Ocean, the water is very, very warm. It's much warmer than normal. And that is the biggest pattern driver on this planet. It will affect weather patterns all over the world. Now, what's happened in the last year or so is we've flipped that into a cooler regime. So now all the waters down there are much colder than normal. We call that La Nina. Okay. And that's the way I can explain that is, say you stick a rod into a fire, all right, and it's real hot, and then you take that rod and you put it in a bowl of ice water, and you're shocking everything. So that's what we've done to our atmosphere in the last 12 months. We've completely stopped it, flipped it, turned it around. We've been, cold as all get out here this winter. It's been very, very cold here. Places in northern Indiana, LaPorte County, have had 115 inches of snow. I mean, you're crushing the snow records up there. Yeah. So you got the hurricanes going on. I think it'll be another active hurricane season. La Ninas typically can birth droughts. We've got a serious drought in the southern plains right now that can probably will spread into here as we get closer into the summertime. So it affects it everywhere. I mean, corn in Argentina, soybeans right now in Argentina, that is the largest soybean growing region in the world, and they are dying. There's no rain, heat. Product of La Nina, it's affecting the stock markets significantly. Prices of grain are going up because the demand is increasing. So it's all tied together. And so
So if somebody wants to get a hold of you, and maybe they've seen this podcast or maybe they've just heard about you from other folks, how do they go about getting in touch with you?
The easiest way is that info@bamwx.com. So info@bamwx.com, and or they can go to bamwx.com, and all of our information is right there on the homepage. You can contact us and find us on any social media platform. But that info@bamwx.com, it comes to all of our phones, and we have a rule within our company. We reply to those within 15 minutes. So
wow,
as soon as that comes in, we're right there, getting your question. So
phenomenal.
Yeah.
Phenomenal. This has been a very interesting conversation, Michael, and certainly I've known you for quite some time, and another great product of Indiana Public Schools and another success story. And obviously I'm very proud of you as one of my students, and consider you not only a student now, but certainly as a friend, and we've run into each other a couple of times. So.
Absolutely. Appreciate you having me on.
Well,
Thank you.
Thank you for being here.
Yep.
Well, I appreciate Mr. Clark being our guest on the IPSS's edition of the Indiana Education Insight. Very interesting conversation, and gave us a lot to think about and to talk about. So now it's time to wrap up this episode with my take on the current state of affairs in Indiana education.
Dr. JT's closing comments.
We'll have a few comments to make about some things that are happening in Indiana. We've discussed the teacher shortage, and we need to address the human capital issues and rebrand the profession of education. As such, we need to change the dialogue. Due to the complex issues associated with school reform, we need to engage our communities and have them help us develop the portrait of a graduate. And as such, the process, as important as the final product, therefore, we need to change the dialogue. Through this public dialogue, it's my hope that we can get our legislators and our state leaders to see the value of public schools and the nexus of promoting public schools and economic development in Hoosier communities. I see these as investments in our children and in our state, not as expenditures. Perhaps we can pursue this issue and others in another segment. On our next show, on February 26th, we welcome Mr. Tony Bagshaw. He's an educational consultant for Battelle for Kids. Perhaps he can provide some additional insight into the State House and education. Join us for that and more on the next Insight into Indiana Education. Thanks for being part of education. Please stand up for Indiana Public Schools.